Welcome, busy gamers. Today we're going to be taking a look at Ravenswatch. Now, time is a precious commodity, and one of the main goals of this channel is to help you get the most out of your free time. So join me as we play for only the first 30 minutes of the game, and I give you my live thoughts and reactions as well as a short summary at the end. After all, if a game isn't giving you what you need in 30 minutes, is it worth grinding through? I would make the case that it's not, so let's go forward. Now, Ravenswatch is developed by Passtech Games, and it enters the action roguelike scene to rid you of your nightmares and put a fun spin on the fairy tale characters you knew and loved growing up. Now, while still early into its early access period, Ravenswatch aims to deliver a concise but imaginative take on the top-down action roguelike set. It has 6 very unique characters, such as a modified version of Little Red Riding Hood, in which she herself is also the big bad wolf, the Pied Piper who gathers and controls a small rat army, and Aladin who manipulates combat wish by wish. The game will unfold over the course of several storybook chapters, in which you will take your chosen character to fight the corrupting forces of the nightmare. As enemies fall, you're going to be generating experience and skill upgrades while also completing events, gathering items and currency in order to purchase additional skills and buffs from the Sandman himself. All of this effort is put forth in order to prepare yourself for a boss that spawns at the end of 4 days, the true nightmare. Days which in this game are also their own somewhat unique mechanic, as many enemies and player characters play differently as the sun goes down and darkness falls. I am a huge fan of roguelikes. I sunk way too many hours into Hades over time, and this art style and this theme seems like it could lend itself into a fun, somewhat tongue-in-cheek game like Hades. That's what I'm hoping for, that's what I'm looking for, but I also really like the addition and adjustment of folklore. I think that is compelling, and each and in every single individual character seems to have a unique mechanic that fits them. So that theme, as well as the addicting gameplay loop that existed in things like Hades, really has me pulled in and excited. Let's go forth with our first look. Alright, and we are off with our first look at Ravenswatch. Now, this particular game is in early access, and so we can expect some bugs, some crashes, some issues. It shows you the early access tag up here in the top portion of the screen, which does look like it's cut off in the stream, but it is one of the first early access builds. And so we're going to keep that in mind as we move forward today, and we're going to be a little easier on them. It opens up the book here. We've got our character selector here. We've got the ability for additional characters that we can invite our friends to, and we can click into it. Now, the first characters you start out with are Scarlet, which is Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf. Of course, these are based off of fairy tales. We have the Pied Piper, we have Beowulf, and we have the Snow Queen. Now, each of these do have a little bit of a write-up over each of their skills. So the first skill here being Ice Skating on the Snow Queen increases your movement speed and creates frost under your feet, under feet apparently, making crossed enemies chilled. So this is maybe a little poorly written here, but it's fine. Day Frost deals 30 damage, Night Frost lasts 6 seconds. So I don't know if this is saying in the day it does damage, in the night it just lasts a specific time, but doesn't necessarily do damage. We've got our Ice Lances, 20 damage, piercing through enemies, plus 50% damage to chilled targets. So I'm going to guess there's going to be a lot of ways to chill. We have create a large enough frost, making enemies chilled. We've got Ice Shatter, making chilled enemies shatter, taking 50 damage, removing their chilled status. We've got Gust of Cold, cast a Cone of Cold in front, pushing enemies away and making them chilled. So kind of a defensive move, it sounds like. And then create a Ray of Frost to the ground, dealing 120 damage per second and creating frost in a targeted zone. All those things seem relatively interesting to me. This looks like it just happens automatically, so it's probably every one of them has a passive. I'm not going to go into detail of all the characters, but it looks like we have basically a mage, a warrior type here with Beowulf, a caster type, but maybe more of a support caster because this game, again, can be played multiplayer. And then your rogue and berserker class here kind of rolled all into one. We're probably going to end up playing the Snow Queen here. I like the idea of this particular character. I like the Anna and Elsa storybook feel here. So that's what we're going to go with to start today for our first look. That being said, I do want to kind of look at a couple of other things here. So we'll select our Snow Queen. We don't have any additional difficulties unlocked yet, of course. And then we've got a couple of other things. We've got compendiums, so where we're going to store a lot of the information about the game here. We've got our settings, and then we have our quick guide. Now, this is something I noticed when I first loaded into the game, and I wanted to go ahead and quickly walk through a few of the things here. First of all, I think this is nice to have as a reference. I hope it doesn't mean that the game isn't about to teach me anything during the game itself, because there's actually quite a lot here. You see there's plenty of dots for pages. It gives a little bit of the story here. There's a nightmare, which is going to be your boss every level. It takes time to awaken. There's a gauge that shows its progress. We've got a few different things here, so you can play in multiplayer. It tells you how to join those things. Let's keep kind of moving through. You do have a safe zone to start with, which is kind of nice. It says you get a frozen game in which you get to choose your first upgrade. Now, I'm not going to really know what I'm upgrading yet, so that's going to be a little bit lackluster. It also warns you that if any hero leaves the safe zone, the timer's going to be starting. There's a day and night cycle rhythm. It says it affects both your heroes and your enemies' behaviors, but when we clicked into those different skills, I didn't really see any mention of nighttime outside of that one mention on the Frost Queen, and so I feel like they're doing a little bit of a poor job in their tooltips there. We've got our map, we've got our nightmare here. Whoa, it advanced the page on me. So we've got our nightmare marker, Sandman markers, but it does not explain what these things are. So what's the Sandman? Healing fountains seem self-explanatory. Chests, dream crystals, which again I don't really know what are. Nightmare tumors, optional bosses, grimoires. So your symbology is fine, but it doesn't really tell you what each of those things are, and it didn't then immediately explain what those are. So that's going to be kind of a knock as well, but we're going to see if it explains it during the game. Defeating monsters give you experience. You've got experience the same as all heroes in the party. That's interesting. Each time you level up, you get a new upgrade. That makes sense. That's kind of normal for games like this. We then have our life gauge. You're going to have healing orbs, which is good, and you can get both a health restore and a major health upgrade for healing fountains. So there's quite a bit going on here. We've got raven feathers. It doesn't look like we can gather them, but they're going to revive you. You probably have one per player, it seems like, so you're either going to get them all, or in multiplayer you've got some. Resilient enemies have a white stagger gauge under their bar. When stagger gauge is filled, enemy collapses. Okay, so you can just do that while damaging them. And then we've got some combat glossaries here. Regen, restore health over time. Vitality, increase maximum health. These are all pretty self-explanatory, so that I like. Then we have our results at the end. They're going to look like this. Tell you what level you reached, how long you played, and what your score was. It doesn't really show what all the score modifiers are, so again, I'd kind of like to see that here. Victory unlocks your next difficulty level, and new magical objects get unlocked as you level. So we've kind of walked through the entire book there. I tried to do that relatively quickly, both because I think you should be able to learn while playing, and because, honestly, reading an entire book on a stream is going to be boring for everyone. We do want to go ahead and get into the game here. It's my hope that it's going to teach me a lot of this stuff, and I haven't really moused over everything. So let's go ahead and kick ready and see what we've got going on. I like the aesthetic of it quite a bit, actually. I like the idea of these storybook characters quite a bit. And I like the idea of kind of these raven spirits. So overall, this game hits a lot of my buttons. Let's see what our upgrades are. So I'm actually going to go ahead and choose to play with a controller here. It's got full controller support, both for PlayStation and Xbox controllers, so it's actually pretty convenient. I tend to like playing these games that way. Choose one upgrade. So Windy Lances, your attacks can curve to seek targets and reset their lifetime whenever they hit an enemy. I don't really know what that means by lifetime. Trait leaves an ice cone clone with 40% of the hero's maximum health, attracting enemies' attention. Only one ice clone can exist. It will melt after 20 seconds. So your trait, okay, so I do actually trigger my trait, and it tells me what button I use to do that. So that's not bad at all. Windy Lances, I think we're going to do curving here. I'm probably going to be a little bit bad early on, and so having a heat-seeking skill is probably for the best. I like that it gives that line indicator of where I'm firing, and if I hold down while it stops me from moving, it does keep going. We've got an R2 ability here, which is a pretty large area. Now that has a 10-second cooldown on it. I have already forgotten what that ability does, and it didn't really show me much here. So let's see if we can get some form of... information. Okay. We can get those up. You can ice shatter, make chilled enemy shatter. Okay, that's why it did nothing in the practice here. And then the gust of cold seems to be your defensive skill. So I think I'm kind of ready to go. There are a couple other things. So I haven't talked to this guy. I don't know what he does. He appears to be a dream dealer. So the Sandman. He takes some form of shards to upgrade things. Upgrades and then consumables. Okay, so consumables I think might be a misnomer. It does look like these things are overall, so gain 10% or plus 10 crit chance. That doesn't have a timer on it, so it looks like that is, maybe you can only purchase it once, but it does look like it's a permanent upgrade. Okay, let's stop belaboring the point. We've got a couple of things on the map, so let's just kind of head out of here and head to something out on the map. Okay, so these things, not only do they go, they keep going. I haven't been able to hit them both with any of these yet, so that's a little... Whoa! That's terrible. Okay, so I don't know if any of you managed to catch that. One, I'm doing terrible damage, just terrible, which is, I don't want to say upsetting, but it's nothing. I'm doing nothing. I'm taking massive amounts of damage here. So your basic skill just really doesn't do a whole lot. These guys explode, and I've eaten through the majority of my own health already. Now I will say that the health bar turning into the exact same color as the stagger bar on those enemies is probably a bad idea. But let's see if I can get back to what I was talking about. So I was up over here, and I can't really even see a change in elevation. But look, when I cast this, it doesn't go anywhere because there's a change in elevation. And so my heat-seeking Frostbolt is hitting the ground in front of me and just destroying itself. That, straight out the gate for me, is pretty terrible. I hope that's unintended. This kind of environment collision makes sense to me, but that kind of environment collision is going to be is too much, I think. So let's try to see what we can get going here. Those explosions are very nice. So the explosions off of your chilled ability is amazing. I will say I would like those cooldowns to really be shown up on the screen a little bit better. Now they do give a pretty good tactile response. Tactile is maybe the wrong word here. They give a good auditory response. So I am able to hear when something comes off cooldown. That being said, it's not specific to a certain skill, so that I still have a little bit of trouble with, I think. Because I can hear that plink or that pop that something is off cooldown, but it doesn't tell me what is off cooldown. So that could definitely be better for me. That breaks the stagger bar very quickly. That's nice. It ramps the damage up a lot to be chilled, so this character just really wants to focus on that. You know, maybe I shouldn't have expected that my base attack did more damage than that. I definitely did expect that it did more damage. So spoiled or not, however that makes me, that guy just continued to attack me straight through my skill, which I'm a little bit surprised about. I really would have thought that while pushing him back, he wouldn't be able to attack, and so maybe I made a little bit of a calculated misunderstanding there. We're gonna say calculated. But that stunned him, but only because I broke his bar, not because pushing him back stopped his attack animation in any way, shape, or form. So that still throws me off a little bit. I feel like pushing somebody back should stop their attack animation. But that's probably more of a minor deal or minor inconvenience than anything else. And it just takes some getting used to, right? Not really sure what this is, but we've got some form of an event here. Kill all enemies before the time expires. This might have been a challenge that I should not have done so early. I don't really know what I'm doing just yet. I'm low on health, all ready to go to start. So that feels dangerous and like I've made a mistake here already. Especially with all this coming on the screen. I am just getting ripped apart. Yeah, I'm dead. I'm dead with 20 seconds left. Let's see if we can get back on the screen and do something. Can we go? I can't even get spawned back in. It immediately casted something in the wrong place. Oh, and I cannot take an upgrade because since it's a live service game for some, it's definitely not going to let me. Because this whole thing ended up being a waste. I'd like to throw that out there. I failed. The grimoire was destroyed. So I took on this this thing that clearly I'm not. I'm just not equipped to take right now. After I use my power, what is my power? Okay, I wish they wouldn't use this terminology. I wish there would be some form of a picture of what I was using. I'm sure it showed me what button my power was. I was still kind of reeling from that event. That event was way too hard for early on, and it drew attention to it in the map. Maybe it's always that hard. It felt terrible here, so I'll just take note of that. That I wouldn't be trying that grimoire again. It killed me, so I lost resources. It was 100 times harder than anything else I've played so far here. We have a healing shrine, but we've already used that raven feather, so I may have just popped an entire heal unintelligibly there, or unintelligently, but I didn't want to sit there and just ignore this permanent health boost. It still feels like it's going to have to be the right call to go ahead and get that now. Okay. Yeah, even though this is a heat seeker, or a guiding bolt, or whatever you want to call it, right? Even though it's supposed to be seeking enemies, its level of how well it seeks people is pretty low. So that's not great. The base attack doing such a low damage without chill does still feel pretty lackluster. You can turn after starting a cast animation, and it will miss. That's also something to note that I didn't really expect. If you turn while casting, even after technically starting casting or triggering the button, it does actively then still cast a different direction. That's different. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely something to note. Apologize, my green screen is messing with us just a bit here. It's this incredibly dark area, so I still have a bit of an after image. So for that, I apologize. It's covering up a little bit more of the map of the graphics than I intended for it to. So we'll definitely work on that for future streams or future recordings of this particular game. We found some form of an item there. It did not tell me what it was when I picked it up, so that's another thing I'm kind of noting. Overall, I really like the graphics. I think the darkness is too much for nighttime, personally. Got a little too dark. I'd maybe like to see a ring of light around the character, but not quite as dark in some scenarios. Wasn't terrible. Wasn't terrible. I know they're trying to convey something different. I was gonna say I've actually not used her ability at all. It has got a pretty long cooldown for what it is, but not using her primary power or special or trait. Again, I'm not familiar with what they're called. They need to identify what is a power, what is a special, what is a trait. But not knowing those things today throws me off a little bit. Yeah, this nighttime it's very dark. The daytime is nighttime dark in most games. So I do think it's a bit excessive. These crow things here, they're just teleports. Okay. Just teleports. And then the Sandman was our home store. So when it showed that in the other, Sandman is just our home store. So our attacks can reset their lifetime. I still don't really understand the reset their lifetime. We're just going to go for silver bullets and get more damage here. We only have 47 left, so we're going to be done. That is a little lackluster, so I'm clearly not generating those fast enough. We're already 17 minutes into the first look. I've lost 1 life, and I have 3 left, so I can die 3 more times. It's pretty generous, but I don't really feel like I'm getting a lot stronger. So I'm sure my pacing is off here. As far as like preparing for the end game, preparing for the boss, really being ready to do something. I think my pacing is definitely off. Okay, let's start using her ability a little bit more. It's so dark I can't really tell where I'm going. But that's definitely an issue. It's just too dark in the darkness. I actually think I did make a little bit of a poor assumption early on. I actually thought it was nighttime when it wasn't at a certain point. Interesting. Okay, so my thing does chill people. These guys with the shields here, these big spitty guys, they are significant in their power. Now it does look like they have friendly fire, so they can hurt their own enemies even with that spit. Or it looked that way, but that didn't look like it there, so maybe I misinterpreted. It's a little excessive. It's really good with the... It's really good with the markers, right? So like that's super clear. I see what they're doing. I see where they're coming at me. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. I think my main issue with it might just be, you know, once you do have a cluster of enemies, they feel sparse, and then all of a sudden you're on a lot, and then there are all these telegraphed ones, and these telegraphed ones have such a huge telegraphed box. You've got to move out of it where you take massive damage, where I'm just kind of plinking away at them. You take a much larger percentage of your health off of yourself. And then it doesn't really seem to have a lot of cooldowns, so you're just constantly dodging those red lines on the map. That's a new... Whoa! That is a new enemy, and that hurt very badly. All of a sudden, he just had a knife out. Once he starts that knife attack, he does appear to be staying, but he moved quick. And as he was doing damage, he dealt an obscene amount of damage. So it's something to note. It's different. That guy actually appears to be somewhat of a healer. Try to stay away from him. We have something that's trying to pull me. Definitely haven't seen that before.
Look on me and despair.
Okay, he's interesting. We got a level off of that. Special also sends 3 attacks in a cone. Cold Heart, gain crit chance for each chilled enemy around, can stack up to 5 times. Again, not really knowing what my... Okay, so my special sends out attacks. My special is... I still wish it used the icon, because that is not the icon of the special. Again, I'm just not used to it yet. Okay, my special is to break the frost, so now my breaking of the frost also sends out that. Definitely need cooldown reduction. Some things feel too... They feel too slow, too chunky, I personally think. It's not overly excessive, but they definitely feel a little slow. Combat feels a bit slow. I will say that while I found a dodge button, it doesn't mention a dodge button anywhere, I don't think. Maybe it's just assumed, hey, all games have dodge buttons, so you should be looking for one. I don't inherently think that's true. Not all games have dodge buttons. So that's something that it should have said. There was 100% no tutorial by the game itself. So that it's not something you want. The game definitely should give you some form of tutorial. It should talk about what you're doing, talk about what you're purchasing. I keep hitting the defense button instead of the dodge button. So you're seeing me do stupid things. Feel free to judge me. I'm judging myself. Completely reasonable. I am judging myself quite a lot, actually. Maybe the dodge button. My not dodge. My defense button actually pushes me backwards, and so I'm needing to dodge forwards to get out of some damage, and I'm actually just pushing myself backwards. I'm just straight up making it worse, which is it's been pretty entertaining, unfortunately. Entertaining to me, sad but entertaining. Embarrassing but entertaining. Okay, so I'm just letting a lot of spiders spawn here. We consume a raven feather. We've died a second time already. The night cycle, again, still just ridiculously dark. It's an issue. I can't imagine that is working as intended. Surely not. Getting trapped here is terrible. It's really bad. You take a lot of damage. Way more than you would think, I think. This is going right back to how badly should you actually care about getting out of those markers. It should be a number one thing. So if you're just being covered up by markers all the time, that's gonna make it pretty untenable. I'm constantly letting all these little spiders come out. This is almost like a little boss area for me. Again, it's probably due to my inexperience in the game so far. I'm not trying to say this actually is a little boss. With these particular enemies, with those spawns, and just your low amount of damage. Like, I feel pretty unimpactful in many ways. Like, a lot of times I'm doing something, I just don't really feel like I have this major impact with my attacks. My attacks are not that chunky. Whereas, again, my enemies, as soon as they hit me, it feels like they just obliterate me. I feel very squishy. Alright, this is another guy that turns into the knife guy. A little knifey friend. We can dodge away from them. It's not bad. Gotta remember these healers. Our defensive skill has killed me multiple times. Keep defending and pushing back. That's a button learning issue. It's not a game issue. It's definitely a me issue. So definitely don't take that as a game error here that I'm complaining about. Right now, biggest complaints: darkness, just feeling pretty underpowered. It could be my play issue the entire time, but definitely feeling pretty underpowered. And just poor explanation. Again, I still have this key off into the right there. Looks like a key. I have zero idea what that's for. We haven't found anything that needs a key. Could be boss related. Hard to say. But as of today, or not today, as of right now, we don't have any idea what that does. We got another pulling guy. It does feel really good when you can get a lot of people chilled and then trigger that attack. That does actually feel pretty excellent. So I've been complaining about the other chunkiness, and I still am. It's definitely not been fixed just because we're... Wow, that's half of my health. So getting hit by one of those summons, about half of my health. It does appear that the healers are not healing themselves. That's a really good sign. That at least they are not then able to just stay up in perpetuity. I'm not sure why he wasn't chilled there. Didn't take any damage from my chill pop. Ah, that looks like I should be able to go down that. That is the edge of the map when I look down. Can pop those relatively quickly if we have all our abilities up. So again, it might just work to speed up the ability cooldowns. That might help the power fantasy. That might help the clear rate. Maybe other people are just not having this issue after you've played a few times. So that still remains to be seen. It's not like I've triggered any of the meta progression of these accounts. So that is very important to note. This is again a first run. Seeing how we got going. Get the rhythm of some things. We're learning the buttons. There's likely to have been a lot of mistakes that are made here. The heals do seem somewhat abundant, so I would probably mention that. So I've taken a lot of damage quite a bit here. And while It often feels like things are almost one-shotting me. If they don't, I am usually able to heal up, to feel better, to kind of recover. We've traversed most of this map. There's not a lot of unique things going on here. The aesthetics are good, but there's not a lot of unique things going on here. Crystals. I don't know what this is. Ah, this is one of the... I think it called them corruption nodes. Doesn't mean I know what it does, but they are corruption nodes. Per the very last thing I interacted with being just awful, as far as level of difficulty versus reward, I haven't decided if I want to interact with this just yet. But maybe we should. It's a test after all. How are we testing something if we're not engaging with it? So it looks like we can attack it, give it some damage. Move it on down here. Okay, we've destroyed it. We get a little cutscene. It's exploding and then it trapped me? Okay, it trapped me in with a bunch of my least favorite enemy type. Maybe not my least favorite enemy type, but a pretty difficult enemy type, I would say. So there's at least none of the healers in here. There's a lot of these guys. Okay, let's see if we can get a bunch of them chilled. Then maybe we can pop that ability when it comes back up. Wow. Again, I just don't feel like I can shred things very fast. Usually the mage is the glass cannon. It's got all the extra damage, right? Definitely doesn't feel so here. We're gonna have moved through this. We've got to level 4. I didn't say what the max level is here, so I don't know. Is 4 good? Is 4 bad? Hard to say. Defense does damage. Crit chance for chilled enemies. We'll go with that. 4% crit chance doesn't seem high. I don't feel like there's ever, a ridiculous amount of enemies on the screen. So maybe it's the wrong choice, but I wanted to get an upgrade. Wow. Spiders do a lot of damage on their bite. Again, we have a lot of things that take a third to half of our health away with one attack. That feels bad considering then the rest of the game seems maybe a bit more focused around me just doing small amounts of damage. These spider eggs are things I really have to make sure I'm working out here. I'm wondering how we dodge that spider's attack there. Maybe I'm just missing it, but it seems to kind of follow me. And then once it follows me, it doesn't seem to want to be going away. So there's multiple waves of this little fight here. We're already down 2. We're hitting the 3rd. We've got an interesting looking shadow snake here. We've got more healers, so we're clearly going to have to deal with them first. It just depends on how bad that shadow snake is. We've got multiple shadow. Okay, it bit me one time and I'm dead. Okay, that's our, I think that's our last raven feather. So we're coming to the end of the journey here, it seems like. These have huge stagger bars. Okay, so that didn't seem like it did as much damage that time. So either I was pretty low. So maybe they really don't do that much damage. It's very interesting. So sometimes I think the hitboxes where they're going to hit extraordinarily clear. It's like it tells me everything I need to know up front. I've got it all, palm of my hand. And then sometimes they do actions with no telegraph. Well, no ground telegraph. They do move. Like that right there. That was a move. I was moving while it was going to strike at me, and it still hits me. So that's interesting. It feels less like I can move. And then the consistency of each type of damage, very, very different. Okay, so we've been defeated. I did not make it to the boss the first time I played. We have a score of 134. I have no idea whether that's good, bad, or otherwise. That doesn't sound great here. Since the example in the book was over 500, I'm going to guess that's pretty bad. It looks like we had a score based on it being normal. We got a 1.34 times my level. My level was only 4.19 here, so that's not a lot of points that we're adding. Then we were defeated, so no increase, multiplayer, no increase, and activities. So I'm not really sure what activities were. I felt like I went completely around the map. I uncovered a lot, so activities are a bit nebulous to me at this stage. We have our level up here. It looks like your first level costs you approximately 150 experience, so we were just shy. And it's got new upgrades and new objects off to the side over here. So maybe we do ramp up in power pretty quickly. It's been more than 30 minutes though, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and pause that timer. I'm gonna take a quick deep breath, try to organize my thoughts, and then we're gonna put down on the record what I thought in the first 30 minutes before I really do any additional playing. Alright, so we have played our first 30 minutes. We've got some coffee. We've tried to think about what occurred. Now, what did I think about the game? I really did enjoy my experience, but I had a lot of complaints. I think a lot of those complaints are things that are going to be covered in the early access, in the roadmap, before launch. Well, let's dive into them. So, honestly, I felt underpowered throughout the entire game. I would assume part of that is due to my lack of skill in playing, but I felt underpowered. I also felt like there were weird dips and spikes in mob density. There were times where I was just kind of wandering around by myself. There were times where all of a sudden I was swarmed and things were just telegraphing over and over and over again. There were also just weird spikes of difficulty on the map. Maybe these are things that I'm going to get familiar with as I continue to play the game. But I did some random event. I got my butt kicked by that event. It then did not give me anything at all positive because I failed it. I didn't get a minor reward for it because I didn't succeed. I got no reward for it because I didn't succeed. All of those things felt bad. Also, there was absolutely zero tutorial of any kind. The only tutorial was the book within the game itself. So the only tutorial was before you start the game, you have access to that little bitty rule book, and that gives you some idea of what's going on, as well as the skills that you can see on the screen as you select your character. It doesn't show what day and night is. Each of your characters on the bottom, your character skills on the bottom don't show what's the power skill, what's the attack, what's the power, what's the trait. They should do all of those things. It should be much more clear about those things. It was a little hard for me to manage my cooldowns. The discrepancy from where the UI had my skills and cooldowns versus where my character was pretty big difference. Now, I would like to see my cooldowns up under my character somehow or something of that nature. That might clutter the screen, and so doing that appropriately is going to be a little bit more difficult, but it would be better as far as my management of my character goes if I was able to do something else. Let's see. Also, darkness. Darkness bothered me every single time it hit nighttime. In fact, during the daytime, sometimes I felt like the day is what the dark should look like. In the dark, you really couldn't see at all. At the very least, I would like to see a nice ring of light around the character, after which it got fairly dark. So they could basically black the screen out outside of a small circle. But instead, it's kind of like they just black the screen out and you have this minor glow that fades and diffuses very, very quickly. It makes it really hard to see. It makes it really a heavy strain on your eyes. And I know the purpose is to obscure some vision, but that with the smoke or the wind or the fog effect that's going on in the game does just kind of take away from the graphics, the feedback that you're getting normally. I also really did not see good explanation for the nighttime skills. I didn't play Annie. It's probably going to be much more apparent. But as I looked at the Red Riding Hood character, it also showed me her skills during the day. It didn't show what the Big Bad Wolf's skills were. So again, just across the board, some clarity issues. But what was good about it, honestly, the art style, again, phenomenal. I really love the theme here. I think the theme is also phenomenal. You got the Sandman selling you things. You've got all these fairy tale characters out there fighting nightmares. And I think that really connects with me quite a bit. The skills themselves all looked very visually appealing, they all looked very unique, and each character, as we kind of moused through them, seemed like they would play extraordinarily differently, so each character will feel very, very different. We also, I think that, you know, the triggers for the cooldowns, where it gave you that auditory feedback, that was very, very nice. I thought that was solid and good. And I thought the little objectives on the map, it was cool to have them. They didn't end up resonating with me, and so maybe it's that I didn't really interact with a lot of them or didn't understand them. Because again, I dropped a key, I went over and found some other things, but I think that is also interesting because it kind of gives you this balance between finding and farming these little baby mobs versus, you know, trying to drive towards an event where you're probably going to fight something more complicated. I also did think the mob differences were actually pretty good. Now, this is only the first area, right? But we had our spear abominations, we had our reaper abominations. Some of them exploded, some of them didn't. We had things with shields that vomited out poison. We had little ghouls that threw rocks or fireballs or just lashed at you. We had people who did the sucking in portals versus phasing forward. You had the priests that healed. You had things that died for its fast. Honestly, just in my very first play, I interacted with quite a few different mob and enemy types. Now, that's going to get repetitive if that's all there is throughout all four acts, but as a general rule, I thought that was actually done very well. Those are really all my first thoughts here. I've talked for about 5 minutes. I'm pretty excited to continue on with this game. All the negatives that I said are things that I think they'll be addressing, things that I have submitted and will submit myself in the feedback from this, as well as more as I spend the next 10 to 20 hours before the review. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do, diving forwards to experiencing additional difficulties and additional maps. They already have an early access roadmap that tells us what's coming in the spring, the summer, and then in the fall right before release. And those things do look good. There's going to be at least 3 chapters to the game. There's going to be a couple of other characters. Each character is going to get new ultimates and new skills and things that will help them be differentiated from run to run. So overall, I think they've got a good plan, a good theme, and a good core gameplay loop here. So it's one that I plan on keeping a lot of focus on as we go forward. Hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, have a great time gaming.